Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Hey, I'm so glad to have you on Life Support. What we do in this program is we want to talk about difficult topics, but we also want to point you to Christ, who is always there, always redemptive, and then to take a biblical look at some really hard things that are going on in our world that we don't want to ignore. We want to find out how to react as Christians as well. And my guest today is back for round 2, and she's great. She's the executive director of Trafficking Justices. Her name is Laura Mulliken, and I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming back.
I'm very glad to be here.
You know, not many of our guests want to come back, so thank you for being here. Now we had a great talk last time just about trafficking and how extensive it is, and sex trafficking and how damaging it is. And toward the end, we got talking about pornography.
Yes.
And I want to delve into that a little bit because we don't talk about that very often in churches. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing a series right now where it's called Culture Clash, and I'm taking these difficult areas like mental health and these different things to help people gain a biblical worldview on these topics. And one of them is going to be pornography. You may get an email from me at some point.
I have some great resources.
Good. See, I'm glad you're back. That's awesome. How prevalent is pornography in our culture?
I think about how we talk about Instagram posts. We talk about food porn. We talk about, pimp our crib. All the euphemisms that we use. Yeah. It is so prevalent, but under the surface in the church world. Statistics from Barna would say that pornography addiction and pornography use within the church are as prevalent as the rest of the world around us. And the problem is that when we shove things down into the dark because we're maybe ashamed in the church to bring forward the idea that I'm really struggling with a pornography addiction, I can't seem to turn it off, or it sent me down a really dark path, because pornography, by its intent and design, is addictive in nature. Mm-hmm. But it's addictive in a way that's different than when we think about addiction to drugs or alcohol. When I'm wanting a bigger high, I take different drugs or more drugs. And it kind of steps up. Same with alcohol addiction and the frequency of use. With pornography, you not only want more time in front of it, watching the images, but I also need different mm-hmm. because of the way my neurons mm-hmm. are firing in my brain pathways. Mm-hmm. And so that leads to addictions to something that is specifically tied maybe to a traumatic event in childhood or my young adulthood. And so I will go down rabbit trails that fetishize people. Mm-hmm. And people become objects, and you become addicted to pixels instead of people.
Yeah.
One of the unintended consequences that we're finding is that, all the advertisements for the little blue pills or, the erectile dysfunction kind of drugs. Yeah,
we can say that on KTIS. It's okay.
Sorry. I just caught
myself. They may call Steve and say, get that word off. No, I'm teasing. I'm totally teasing.
What we're finding is that the people who are using those pharmaceutical options are increasingly 19 to 30-year-olds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because they have become so wired to the screen that's in front of them that they can no longer actually maintain a physical relationship.
So they've traded in the screen for even a real partner.
Yes, absolutely.
And the real partner doesn't satisfy them like the screen.
Yes. And think about that as a church.
Yep.
How is the woman married to someone who's addicted to pornography and can no longer be intimate with her, how is she experiencing a sermon on marriage
Yep.
or
Yep.
intimacy?
Yep.
And how is he experiencing that as well? This is not like something to put on the person who's struggling, like any addiction, right?
Right.
It's a perversion of God's good gift.
Yeah.
God gave us the good gift of sex, and this is Satan's counterfeit
Yep.
that he's using to disrupt people's lives.
Yeah. And it's incredibly destructive. But I think the fact that it's in the church is important for us to recognize. And I think it's important that we don't take it for granted that everybody sitting in front of us on Sunday is free from this stuff. In fact, I usually, go to the other side and go like, I'm just going to assume that a lot of these people are struggling with
Yes.
these issues so I can talk about them and not feel bad about talking about them. But there's this idea that pornography is a victimless crime. I can look at porn, not going to hurt anybody, hey, it's just me. But what's going on behind the scenes? I mean, who are the people they're looking at? I mean, isn't there an incredibly destructive, dark underworld that's producing this stuff?
Yes, it is. And pornography isn't even included in that $99 billion industry of trafficking for
Wow.
sex. So pornography is a kind of a closed culture world, much like a strip club is. There's a lot of coercive control by the people who are running the sets. I've talked to woman after woman who went to perform, had agreed to a contract. Maybe they are already being prostituted, and so their pimp sends them on a shoot for a pornography film, and what they are told they're supposed to perform, when they get there, they're stuck there, have
Yeah.
no way out, and then they're asked or forced to perform additional things that went beyond their agreed thing. So really, anytime that I consume pornography, I am not able to be certain that the person on that screen is not under duress, or that I am actually watching someone else be abused
Yeah.
for my personal pleasure.
Yeah. Well, at the very least, you're using someone who's made in the image of God.
Yes.
And no one deserves that. I mean, we are all made in the image of God.
Yes.
And to somehow accept pornography as a normal part of life, to me, is just, you have to just kind of throw that whole thing out and not even think about the other person. The thing that disturbs me a lot about what's happening within churches, and couples will tell me this, is that there's this idea that as long as we use porn together, then it's okay. It's just part of our sex life. How destructive is that to a sex life if a couple decides, oh, we need to like jumpstart our relationship a little bit, and I've got to believe that can get really bad really quick, right?
Well, I would say, as a believer,
Yep.
that God's intent for sex was between one man and one woman.
Correct.
And there is a beauty that we miss in being able to explore each other over a long period of time. There's a beauty in that unfolding story over time. And when we bring other people into that story, even vicariously through pornography, I now have 4 or 17 people, depending on what I'm watching, in the bedroom with us.
Right.
So I just think, again, and I also, for people who on the outside as Christians kind of naively think of, the olden days of still photos from the late 1800s or something, with a little cleavage showing.
Right.
Today, almost every single pornographic video that couples would consume normalize violent behavior. They normalize women either screaming in pain or being forced to say they like experiencing the pain that they are having exerted on them. So it normalizes misogyny.
Yep.
It normalizes pain-filled sexual experiences, which I don't believe was ever God's
No.
best intent for
No.
couples.
No. And the thing is about sex is that you have to work at it as a couple. And as life changes, you have to adjust and you have to talk about it and you have to be sacrificial. When you're talking about pornography, there is no such thing as sacrificial. You're just trying to grab what you want for you.
Yep.
And you never have to learn how to serve your partner, and to me that's incredibly destructive, because God created marriage as a picture of Christ's love for the church, the intimacy that Christ has for his church. I believe it goes all the way to the Trinity. There's this intimacy in the Trinity that we can't understand, but marriage gets us as close as we possibly can to that. And when you bring all these we're already dealing with sin, and sin has wrecked everyone, so we're already struggling with that. And then you purposely bring all these other things in, and that whole beauty, the magic of it all is gone.
Yes.
And that's what Satan wants.
Yes.
He wants to turn this into like a business enterprise.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's working in a lot of ways, and that's what's discouraging at times.
It is. It cheapens.
The everything.
Gift that God has given us. I love that image of the Trinity as a dance. You know, they're one and moving in and out in relationship with one another. And I think too, what you mentioned about sex being something between a couple where you are serving the other. And I think about pornography. It is so freaking selfish.
That's all it is. Yeah.
It is selfish.
Yep.
There is no intent for me to serve my husband's needs or for him to serve mine.
Right.
If I'm bringing other people into that relationship.
Yeah. I'm talking with Laura Mulliken from Trafficking Justice. So if you're a woman and you're caught in a relationship, I know that women also struggle with porn. We're just going to use this as our example, but you're a woman and you're stuck in a relationship like this. What do you do?
Wow. Well, hopefully it is a relationship where you still have a voice and it's not in the context of an abusive relationship. And you would actually be able to speak up and share with your partner how you are feeling in those moments and why you feel uncomfortable with this. I've worked with women or had friends through the years who have literally ended up having plastic surgery because they didn't meet the ideal that their husband now had in his pornified version of what the woman he wanted to be in love with should look like. And I would say have safe friends within the church that you can talk to. And the same for men. I mean, I think if we let this out into the light, we can find hope and healing in Jesus. If I try to fight, like AA is popular for a reason, right? There's power in community and confession. And we've lost some of that art of confession and accountability in Christian circles. And so to talk about it with your girlfriends who are trusted, and for church staff to be aware of the prevalence of this within church so that our care ministries can come alongside of these couples. And I don't mean just the woman who expresses concern, but also the gentleman who is consuming porn. And on kind of a tricky side note, I think something for us to be aware of in the church, about 10 years ago, the porn industry decided that it had kind of saturated the market for men, and they started targeting women to become pornography consumers. And right now we're at about 37% of women in churches are
Wow.
also consuming pornography. So it's increasingly a bipartisan problem for all intents and purposes.
That's a good term nowadays. We all understand what that means in America. So there is hope in Christ, though.
Absolutely.
So we're hearing all of this, and we tend to think, oh no, this is going, like it's a train going down the tracks. God's redemptive work is always ongoing, right? So there's always hope.
Yes.
No matter how far you might even be down the rabbit hole,
yes,
there's hope and healing in Christ.
Yes.
Where does that start? Does that start in just admitting to yourself that you have a problem, you need to get help, you need to start the process? Where does that start where you can get off this stuff if you're addicted to it?
I think much like other addictions, there needs to be a personal a personal response that says, yes, I have a problem. You have to acknowledge that this thing has gotten a hold of me in ways that I no longer have autonomy or control over these urges or desires.
Right.
And often in our individualistic, prideful, we don't want to admit that we have problems. So often we're and then attach sex to it. In the church, we are so afraid to look weak. And yet, in my weakness, he is strong. So some of the most powerful stories of change and hope in this area have come actually from teenagers who have found accountability groups with a small band of guys who have said, we are going to stop this on our watch. And I think that we should actually speak out and be a protective factor in our school hallways. So somebody's getting felt up in the hallway or someone is being harassed online. They want to be a line of defense as a response. That's hopeful.
That is hopeful.
For them and the girls.
That's right. And because here's the thing and I think people in churches need to start thinking about being open to hearing these stories. Max Lucado not long ago came out and said, hey, early in my ministry, I had a problem with alcohol. I would drive to the other side of town. I would drink during lunch or something and then come back to the church. He confessed it all, and the elders worked with him and so forth. I'm gonna bet $10, and I'm not a bettor. My brother does. He gambles all the time, but no, he doesn't. But if he would have said, I went to the other side of town to view pornography, he wouldn't have a job right now. So I think people are afraid to say those words because they will be judged, they will be rejected, the look they're going to get will stop them from even being willing. So if you find a group of guys or women, it might only be one or two. But find somebody that isn't shocked by your behavior, and here's how I think you would know, is if they've already shared some stuff about them. And if you've heard them share some transparent stories about themselves, then you are likely safe to tell your story. But don't just tell anybody either. It's a hard thing.
It is a really difficult thing, but it is how God made us for people.
I know.
And so it is a good thing to have that circle of friends that you can be transparent and honest.
Because Satan wants to isolate us. The first thing that happened after the fall was Adam, they went and hid. And we want to hide all of this stuff. And so that's part of Satan's game. He isolates, he attacks, and he continues to destroy. So tell me what you do over there at Trafficking Justice.
Well, we do a lot of talks on pornography and its harms, or healthy relationships is often how we end up framing it within student ministries. And then we do prevention talks on child sexual abuse prevention and digital safety. so that parents or grandparents can engage with their kids on helping them to navigate these new waters with safety, and putting some tools into the hands of people. We also come alongside of restorative organizations who, like Terebinth Refuge or Breaking Free, will throw baby showers for survivors of sex trafficking
that's
who
great.
are having babies,
Yeah.
or and just make them feel loved.
Yeah.
And that those kids just celebrated.
That's great. Yeah.
So things like
are
that.
parents normally behind?
Parents normally behind on
Not-
kind of understanding.
Yes.
Or yes.
Yes.
Well, I think.
In other words, the kids are going so fast, the parents are
Yes.
trying to always catch up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are so many apps that come out every week.
Yeah.
It feels like, there's
Well, video games update constantly too.
all the time. And some
Yeah.
things that parents might not know, like you've got safety control set up on your iPhones for your kids. But when you update the software, some of those settings go back.
Yes.
And you have to go in again.
Plus, children
and
are
reset
very
them.
good at finding ways around the software that you've purchased.
Yes, they can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And so, at the end of the day, there is no 100% guarantee. So I would just, maybe recommend that you talk to your children and don't be afraid to make it frank. Number 2, you pray for your children.
Yeah.
And you spend time noticing and understanding them and not just assuming
Yes.
that everything is okay. And don't depend on your youth pastor to fix everything.
Oh, amen.
And we have like the best youth pastor in the world here. He's not the parent of the kids.
No. But he is an ally for
He's an
those
ally for the
parents.
kids. And so that's exactly right. So he can help the parents, but don't just drop them off on Wednesday and assume that everything's going to be okay with your kids. It's not the way it works, is it?
No, it's not. I do have a really good resource that I recommend to parents of all kids of all ages called Axis, AXIS,
Okay.
.org, I believe. Axis.org. And they have conversation starters, and they have a
that's good.
weekly email that just kind of keeps you abreast of what is happening culturally for your elementary or your teen kids. So you can kind of know what the lingo is or what the new emojis mean.
Yeah.
All of those things.
Yeah.
And
Like when you're texting your teenager, you often say like, what are you talking about? What?
Yes. So I think that's got great resources on how to have, and the founder says the one conversation, but you just have it many times.
That's
over
really
decades.
wise advice. All right, website again.
Axis.org.
Okay.
AXIS. And ours is traffingingjustice.com.
Got it. And I'm so glad that you were here, and thanks for sharing all this with us, and keep up the work that you're doing. It's really important.
Thank you.